We're back.
We are back at it.
Welcome back, friends.
Welcome back.
Today's episode is going to be really interesting. We're talking from a different perspective.
For sure.
So one of the things that we've talked a lot about, obviously, on the podcast is big age and the changes that we've experienced or we're experiencing or our communities are experiencing during this new phase of our life. But we haven't really talked about the experience of having children in a big age.
Mm-hmm.
Not having babies in a big age, but older parents having us.
Exactly. So this idea that we are this sandwich generation now where we oftentimes are parenting up in some ways and caring for our elders and our caretakers. And also we are parenting down.
Yes. And so we have an amazing guest today, Ruth Nemzoff, who is going to talk from her own perspective. She's incredibly well respected by us, but by hundreds of thousands of people as well. But before we get to Ruth and some of these questions that we want to ask about our parents and grandparents, let's get to dumb shit people say.
All right, have at it.
Ohio anti-abortion activist Laura Streitman addressed the rape of a 10-year-old girl by saying that while the child's pregnancy might have been difficult, a woman's body is designed to carry life. Every single time, life wins. April 2023. What say you?
This is so deeply disturbing. Number one, a 10-year-old is not a woman. Number two,
not even close.
Not even close. That's prepubescent in so many ways. Number two, to say that a woman's body is designed to carry life is so demoralizing, as if that's the only thing that we are good for. And number three, in a lot of ways, it justifies the horrific harm that has been done to this child, because a 10-year-old certainly cannot consent.
And what about this concept of life always wins? When her life would be over. And the pregnancy was born out of a rape because a 10-year-old can't consent no matter how old. It's kind of unspeakable.
It really
I mean, not kind
is. We talked about this on a previous episode, and I said, do you think these people really believe these things? And you said, maybe, but most importantly, what they are doing is going to these extremes in order to prove a point and to activate a base. And so this idea that every single time life wins, they have to say that because then it justifies all of these horrific policies that they're putting in place to limit or, in many cases, completely deny a person's access to abortions and pregnancy termination services. It has to be extreme. The talking points have to be extreme, because if not, it would undercut their policymaking. Could you imagine, Margo, and I don't want to put you in this position, but you do have children, someone saying this about your child who has been abused?
No, and you know, when we were putting this together, I said, Ella's almost 12.
Yeah.
2 years older than this child. And I would feel the same way now. And so I have an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old, basically, and a 3-year-old. But the idea that either of those two of my daughters could bear a child when they can't brush their teeth without me instigating it, get ready for school, eat breakfast, bathe.
It's literally a baby having a baby.
Correct.
It's a child having a child.
And you don't recover from that. So notwithstanding the horrific abuse that child endured undoubtedly when she got pregnant.
Yeah.
But then the abuse of having to carry a pregnancy to term. And I think what happened in this case, but our listeners and viewers can educate us, is that child had to leave the state and get healthcare access in another state. So it was kind of quadruply traumatizing, right? She got pregnant. She was sexually assaulted. She and her parents sought intervention services, sought medical services. They couldn't get them. So she had to go through the whole rigmarole of doing all of those checks and probably had an ultrasound and all of the things that we know happen before someone is able to terminate a pregnancy. Then to be told that it's illegal and then to have to cross state lines in an emergency to get that service. And then to be in the news and your healthcare provider threatened.
And then it says it might have been difficult. This is what this anti-abortion activist said. It might have been difficult. No shit. It was incredibly traumatizing and one of the most horrific experiences that I could think of. Not only to be raped, but to also have a pregnancy as a result and a reminder of said rape.
And then to seek help and not be able to get it and be the point of this conversation and have to do something that you're told over and over is illegal when it's just taking care of yourself.
Well, this goes back to our point often about what pro-life really is, because this is not preparing this child for any type of life. If she had carried this baby or this pregnancy, if she carried it all the way to term, that's not a life.
No.
You don't care about this person's life. You care about your talking points, your policies, and what you really care about is power.
Absolutely. And kind of deconstructing that power over female bodies, but then power over all bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I am so happy that she was able to terminate the pregnancy. Shout out to all the advocates on the ground who
helped her and her family.
Absolutely. And it is a reminder of why this work, especially on an interpersonal level, Margo, remains to be so important.
Absolutely.
Because we know that our policymakers, our lawmakers at this time are in many states across America not in a position to do so, are refusing to do so, and are only seeking power and political gain off the backs of children.
And it's important, if you can, to donate financial resources because there's so many families and individuals who want this intervention service who can't afford to travel.
Yeah.
It's not a given, even if it is available in an adjacent state, that anyone can do that.
I was just thinking that because all of these loopholes that the family had to go through, think about time is one of the most precious resources outside of finances. That takes time to make multiple appointments, to advocate in multiple places, to cross state lines, taking off work. We cannot assume that people are in a position to fight this hard for fucking healthcare. It is healthcare.
Or know how.
Absolutely. So I said before in a previous episode that one of the most evil tenets of white supremacy is that it is willing to risk children, like this idea of how we fund public education in this country, right? Some children receive quality education, some children don't, depending on their zip code. But the same thing about the patriarchy, it is so evil that it is willing to harm a child. And that should be eye-opening for all of us.
Okay, let's get to our sponsor. We are sponsored by BetterHelp.
Yay! So BetterHelp, Margo, as you know, is an amazing company that provides online virtual services, therapeutic services with licensed mental health professionals. I myself see a therapist through BetterHelp. We have an amazing relationship. And what I love is the ease and the practicality of building that relationship. I mean, I was able to sign up online using the app. I filled out a questionnaire. The questionnaire allowed for me to mention everything from the needs that I had as far as like my mental health and what I was seeking as far as services are concerned, but also the kind of therapist that I wanted to build a relationship with.
Amazing. And one of the things that I really like about it, in addition to its ease, is that it's incredibly patient-centered. So the types of formats of that relationship in terms of time, but also if people want to talk video to video or videos off or chat through their confidential online platform in a text message online chat sort of way. Everything is very catered to the needs of the patient.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so are the prices. And so they don't accept insurance because they do service people in all 50 states. But what they are able to do is provide a sliding fee scale, which is so helpful.
And it's less than market rate for private pay therapists. So the average fee for an individual session is between $60 and $90. And they have other forms of financial assistance available. So do not let finances get in the way of you seeking quality care in this realm. BetterHelp really does offer an alternative.
Yes, and the fact that it is virtual or via chat or text or by phone is great because I've even logged into my therapy session while traveling. And so this is literally, as you mentioned, patient-centered, and you can do it from anywhere.
And I just kind of chuckle because for anyone who's had a therapist or a therapist who's in a more traditional format, any form of technology is maybe not their strength, right? I still get paper bills from my therapist that I have to pay and then bill to my insurance.
We will ensure that we have our BetterHelp link down below. Please use it to sign up for your therapeutic session.
Amazing. Okay, so back to Ruth. I'm going to read a little bit about Ruth because her bio is ample and diverse, and she's an incredible inspiration to us and kind of our generation of feminists. And then we're going to hear from Ruth in her own words. Dr. Ruth Nemzoff is the author of Don't Bite Your Tongue, How to Foster Rewarding Relationships with Your Adult Children, and Don't Roll Your Eyes, Making In-Laws into Family. She's a resident scholar at Brandeis Women's Studies Research Center. Ruth has given lectures in over 350 venues on emerging adulthood, parenting adult children, empty nest, intermarriage, grandparenting, and family dynamics in intergenerational families. Currently, she's an advice columnist for the American Israelite, as well as a frequent blogger for the Huffington Post and Betterafter50. She serves on the board of Interfaith Family and Brandeis Women's Studies Research Center. Her papers are archived at the Schlesinger Library at Harvard University, which granted her a doctorate in social policy. She has served 3 terms in the New Hampshire legislature and was New Hampshire Deputy Commissioner of Health and Welfare. She is the mother of 4 children, 4 in-law children, and the grandmother of 11.
Oh, she's bad. We are so excited to have you here today, Ruth. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we're going to jump right in because you are an expert on so many subjects. I mean, your lived experience for one. So we were wondering, what is something you wish every millennial adult child knew about their parents?
I think it's that their parents are people. And that means that they're humans with foibles. And that means they have experience. And that means they still think even though they're old.
What do you mean by they still think?
Well, what I hear from young people is I am parenting my parents. And I think, other than in cases where, say, there's, real mental decline because of, Alzheimer's or another kind of dementia. But other than that, parents are people, parents think, and like all adults, you make decisions on a continuum between maybe practical matters and aesthetics or practical matters and what you want, all different things, and that they have a right to make decisions. And the reason I get riled by that, because, you're a parent now,
Yeah.
No way do you do for your parents what you are doing for your children. You do a lot for your parents. I happen to know you do, but not like for your children.
No, it's a completely different relationship.
Thing. And I guess the other thing is, there's an old saying that that one mother can care for 6 children, but 6 children can't care for one mother.
Oh, wow.
That's very true. My great-grandmother, who I mentioned in another episode, had 10 children.
Yeah.
And to see them all attempt to coordinate her care was like herding cats. I mean, it just did not work well, unfortunately.
So a little bit of a follow-up on that, Ruth. How would you suggest adult children respond or engage their parents if they are worried about their parents' decision making? So I really appreciated kind of of course, the concept that parents are humans with foibles and strengths and they can make their own decisions. And obviously outside of complete mental decline. But what about decisions that might not be in the children might worry are not in their best interest? How do you suggest we engage in conversations around that?
I think ask about their reasoning. Why do you do that? So, for example, as you know, I bike every day. And it's a trade-off. I could fall. I know. But for me, the mental health and the joy it gives me, at this point, I'm making that trade-off. Whether I'll make that trade-off a year from now, I don't know.
And if you feel comfortable, do you mind sharing with our viewers and listeners how old you are?
I am 82.
Amazing. And you bike every day?
Every day. Well, not in the winter.
Outside?
Yes, outside.
Where do you bike to?
Well, I biked to the Arboretum. I took the Southeast Corridor the other day. I go along to Charlestown on the Charles River, for those of you who know Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are your kids worried about it?
Well, I don't. I think they might prefer that I don't, but they understand.
Right.
We've talked about how much it means to me,
Yeah, that's good. I think I actually used the term parenting up in the beginning of the show. So I'm so happy to hear you say it and to correct that line of thinking.
Well, that's my opinion.
But but hearing you say it, I definitely agree, because I think that it can in some way insinuate this power imbalance. Like, I have to step in.
Exactly. It's the power imbalance that isn't really the same, And I love it that my kids worry about me. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. It means they care about me. What could be better, right? But on the other hand, I do want to make decisions. And, a lot of decisions are gray. There are pros and cons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In every phase of life.
And I like to do that with my children, because I might think they're making a terrible decision. And if I ask them about it, it turns out, it's a pretty good decision.
Right. It's based on their own reasoning.
Yeah.
What is the best way, in your opinion, for adult children to ask for help from their parents?
By being polite. By using the same kind of politeness you'd ask a friend, and explain why you need the help. And if they can't do it on that particular day, you might say, is there something that would work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And conversely, you might, let's say they're giving help and it's not the kind of help, some kind of help is the kind of help that we can do without, that song.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And you might sort of say, I just love it that you come over to be with the kids, but it would really be helpful to me if you could maybe stop at the grocery store on the way and then come in and play with the kids, or, and maybe limit the time that way without saying you can play, let's see, from 2 to 2:10. So,
I have a question that follows up about expectations around what it means to be a grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Because I hear people complain like, well, grandmothers ain't the grandmothers that we used to have back in the day, where they would kind of step in or move in and really become a second parental figure in some ways to children. I was definitely raised like that. But it seems, using your own life as an example, that people are so active these days. Right. Is that expectation fair? Have you navigated it in your personal life? What does it mean to be a grandparent?
Well, I would say that there are, grandparents, first of all, range from age, say, 35, 36 to 105.
Yeah,
yes.
So
that's very true.
You have this huge, huge range of people. And I think we also know people are working longer, and they may be working for pay, they may be working not for pay, but they are busy. And then many are very active. And also many have disabilities, even minor or major disabilities. So, giving a blanket answer, I can't say. I can say it's important to discuss this, what your expectation is. In my own case, I had one daughter here who was a physician, is a physician, and she's moved now. But when she was here, they were infants. And I told her, I will make myself available if I have to go through hoops in an emergency. But, I'm still working, and I really don't want to babysit full time.
Mm-hmm.
And she understood that. And so we worked out a way, that worked for both of us. And we talked about it.
That transparent conversation, I think, is so important that you just hit on.
Incredibly important. And, the expectation can go either way. In other words, the grandparent may expect that, oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to see the kids every day and it's going to be fabulous. And the parents may say that wasn't quite what we had in mind, or vice versa. You know, everyone has expectations. And of course, expectations are, you know, disasters waiting to happen. So it's better if you discuss those.
And it also doesn't leave space for needs changing.
Absolutely. And the needs, as we know, with children change. Well, you certainly see it, the difference between an infant who wants to be carried around all the time and the toddler who's, you know, you need to have hawk eyes in the back of your head and front of your head and sides.
Yeah.
And it goes on throughout life.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but I was also thinking about my own mom, for example, who in many ways parented my brother and I very differently. We have, as you know, a large age gap between the two of us. There's 11 years between us. And I remember when my brother moved to Boston a number of years ago, my mom would come in and bring him food and take his laundry. And I remember joking with Josh at the time and my brother and my mom, like, you never did that for me. And she said, well, you never asked.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was a little bit more complicated because there's, you know, some gender stuff.
Yes.
But it's true.
Yeah.
I just wanted her to do it for me.
Right.
And
Magic.
Right. And I never said, I need your help in this way. Now, I don't know if my brother did or she was just so concerned about his well-being that she did it by default. But it is this interesting thing on both ends where we have these expectations, but if people don't know what they are, how can they satisfy them?
But I think what I said before about, just treating them like people, when you go to someone's home, some of your friends happy to have you clean up the kitchen, happy to put the dishes in the dishwasher, and others, they like it their particular way. Yes. And, so you always ask, may I help? Mm-hmm. May I put the dishes in the dishwasher? If you come to my house, I'm telling you in advance, audience too, that you may always help.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
So have your ideas about parenting changed over the years?
Oh, my goodness. Yes. First, I'll talk about me.
Yes, please.
So I have 4 children, 16 years apart, top to bottom.
Oh, wow.
So the first child, I was raising the perfect child. She was going to be perfect. The fourth one, my goal was that she could pay for her own psychiatrist. So clearly I changed my views because I realized, and by this point, so I had my first child at 28, which at the time was quite late. So my grade school friends, kids were way ahead of me. And I had seen enough people that I had judged their parenting, and their kids turned out great. And I thought they were not so great. And vice versa. I saw people who I thought were terrible parents, and the kids turned out okay. So I just, and then as I lived abroad, I saw that there are many ways to parent. So I became a lot less judgmental about it. I think it's really important to love your kids. It's obviously important not to abuse them, whether verbally or physically. But I think that loving them and doing the best you can is really important. And I am always impressed that people do the best they can. And I actually had an experience just last week. I was in DC and I was on the bus. And these 2 people come on the bus and they're nipping away and they're totally drunk. And they say, what time does the game start? And it turns out they're going to their high school son's game. Now, I felt sorry for the kid to have to deal with drunk parents at the game, but they were doing the best they could. They did love their child. I'm not saying this is a role model, but just it's very easy to criticize. It's much better to just try to see the best that people are doing and work with that best.
Assume that everyone is doing the best under the circumstances that they're presented with.
And they have good intentions.
Yeah, and move from there. That's my opinion.
Yeah. For sure. So can I ask a follow-up? I remember in a previous relationship was complaining to my mom one day about my former partner's parent. And my mom said, well, you know what I think the mother's issue is? It's that she doesn't know how to parent an adult child.
Right.
She was good at parenting a kid, and she's still using those same parenting techniques.
Right.
What advice would you have to someone who's trying to navigate this transition in parenthood?
Well, first I want to say is there are many stages of parenting, and we're not going to be good at them all. So, for example, in my case, I am not a very patient person. So I am not a baby whisperer. The kids sense my energy, and it drives me crazy. So I am fortunate that 3 of my in-laws are baby whisperers. So I let them really hold those babies. I am terrific with the toddlers. You know, I'm on the floor, I'm doing the yoga. And so really being honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you're not. And of course, it always begins with being honest with yourself. Then I would say with your adult children, realize that both you are in process and they are in process. It's like a Rubik's Cube almost. There's a lot of moving parts here. And we're all doing this for the first time. So be forgiving. They're the first time adult children, and you're the first time, you know, a parent of this particular adult child, even if you've had experience before. So I would recommend those things for starters. And beginning to turn the relationship from a all-commanding, all-knowing to one of more discussion and sharing your beliefs, your feelings, and respecting theirs. But also it's okay to disagree, just like you do with your friends.
It's so amazing that you say that, Ruth. 2 things really resonated with me. I actually just wrote a piece for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And one of the questions was, what have you learned since becoming a mother?
Yeah.
And I shared it with Tashira, actually. And one theme I talked about was being honest with myself, that I'm really good at certain things and not good or interested in others. So the example that I used was I was really good at breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I am horrible at playing Legos.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't.
Oh, yes, yes.
I don't care. They're messy. I just, that's not my thing.
And those little pieces.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Yes.
And so I have given myself grace to be like, I just don't do that. I'll play Candyland. I'll do Monopoly. I'll do drawing. I'll do painting. I'll do clay. I'll cook. I don't like doing Legos. But I have always gone backwards, right? So I have an almost teenager, as you know, a kid and a toddler. So also a pretty big age gap. And I am coming into these teenage years with a lot of, I don't think hurt feelings is the right way, but I feel constantly kind of wounded by what my daughter says to me. Like, I can't believe you said that. I can't believe you're wearing that. Why are you dancing like that? What, that argument's stupid. And I'm constantly like, oh. And then there are other times where I'm so interested and kind of overwhelmed that I've created this person who's out in the world. But I'm taking from you that I can be graceful and just say, you know, I'm not great at like being criticized by my teenager.
Yeah. Well, also, I'm not sure you need to be. You can say, you know, honey, that hurts my feelings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about emotional intelligence.
Yeah. And just be honest about it.
I mean, I think that's her purpose.
Right.
You know, sometimes.
Right. But that's okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, yes, I think that I personally think that's the wonders of having in-laws, whether they're by law or not by law, because they will have talents that they can give your grandchildren or your children and really respect that maybe your mother-in-law drives you crazy or your father-in-law because of A, B, and C, but they play chess with the kids.
Yeah.
Or, you know, and just work with whatever talents people have, because we're all flawed human beings. We're all limited.
I know, it's also so interesting, right? Seeing your children or people in your family who have some of your qualities and some of
Harris's, my husband's qualities.
Exactly. And it's like, whoa, my kid, for example, as you know, my children have such a strong Jewish identity.
Right.
That is, I'm Jewish, but that's not because of me. That's because of Josh and my in-laws.
Right.
And that is such a huge part of their life. And they know so much more than I do.
Right.
And so I'm constantly learning from them. And there are things that my mom is a really big gardener, a really big chef, right? Is really into design. And so I see those things coming into.
Exactly.
And it's just amazing to see them have both where, one of us would only have one.
Right.
Exactly.
There's so much to learn in this world. There is just so much to learn. You need as many teachers as you can get.
I love that. Grandparents are teachers.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I have a question to follow up on Tashira's. How did you prioritize yourself in your marriage through a very long season of parenting?
Okay. Yes, 35 years of first stage parenting. Whew. I am very happy to be an empty nester. I still look at the clock at 3 o'clock and say, I don't have to be any place.
That's amazing.
Nice.
Yes. So, meanwhile, the answer to this question, I'm going to begin it with a story.
Please.
And, my husband and I found that we really needed a weekend twice a year, usually in the spring and the fall, to just be together, to remember why we got married. Because at least once you have kids, I don't know about, I'm sure it's probably true in just any marriage or relationship, is you're a business. You're getting through life. Who's going to get the groceries? Who's going to make the dinner? Who's getting person A or feeding the cat or whatever? So we were desperate. We really needed a weekend. We were so excited. Well, my nephew came to town, and I haven't seen him in years. It was a couple of years. He was at that stage of life, early 20s. And oh my goodness, we really had to see him. Because I come from a family where you show up for family. So, no problem. Friday night, we'll see him. It's going to be great. And then my daughter hit her head on the swimming pool. So obviously, we're going to the ER, right? And we're not seeing either one. Well, she's all fine, it turns out. So we see my nephew, and then before noon on Saturday, we went for an overnight. So we got it all in. But I tell you the story because the way priorities changed. It was like a nanosecond, and everything changed. And so I think that it is constantly changing. And over the years, it did change. But I was fortunate. Well, I was unfortunate that I began my parenting before the women's movement. But then I ended it after the revolution. And it was wonderful because the pressures for him to participate, he was a wonderful father even before, but it was a different role. Mm-hmm. And then he became much more participatory. So we changed that. That changed the marriage relationship. And so it just kept changing. And then my husband, when he retired, he said, we're going to go on a trip together. And I would advise anyone, you don't have to go on a fancy trip like we did, but you do need to do whatever you did well when you were dating. Mm. To remember, why did I marry this person? Because as I said, it becomes a business, and you're a good team. We were a fabulous team. But we just had this marvelous trip to Australia, New Zealand. We called it middle-age backpacking because we had a rolly bag, and stayed in fancy hotels.
That's amazing.
It was great. It was great. No schedule. And, it was just great. We remembered, oh my goodness, we have such a good time together.
Oh, that's great. So you are a trailblazer. You are the first of many, many things. Talk to us about just your life and all of the great experiences you've had as being the first.
Well, I've had great experiences, and it is also incredibly difficult. Mm-hmm. And, a part of me just says that's the price you pay. We shouldn't have to, but there are lots of things we shouldn't have to. So I was, I went to college, and then I was a teacher because in those days, there were very few options for women. And I loved teaching, by the way. And then I was a program coordinator. And then I was asked to run for the legislature. And I thought I was asked to run because I was so terrific. And because I, I'd started programs citywide for persons with disabilities. But when I went on the campaign trail, the only question was, are you married to the doctor named Berman or the real estate man named Berman? And, I had a choice to make. Do I punch these people or angrily talk to them? Or do I just answer their question and then move the conversation? And obviously I did that. But I learned so much about people, and that they weren't insulting me. They were just trying to place me in the community. Again, thinking good thoughts rather than bad thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was appointed assistant minority leader, and then eventually was appointed as deputy commissioner of health and welfare. I was the first woman on the board of a bank and on the industrial board of, real estate, how you distribute land or something to that effect. And what I can tell you is I was zinging all the time. I was like, you're just zinging. You're in the spotlight all the time. Everything you say is in high fidelity. I guess we'd call it Dolby surround sound now.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I had to say something brilliant.
An Instagram reel over and over and over for people who are watching.
Yes. And it was really, really hard, but really, really wonderful. Mm. And of course, in those days, it was like when I moved down to Massachusetts and I ran for governor's council, there were 9 candidates. I was the only one without a partner there, looking adoringly up at me, because my husband was working. Mm-hmm. And now that's changing in politics generally. But so all these things, there are prices to pay. And what I learned was I wasn't Hillary Clinton, in that when my children got old enough to read the newspaper, I wasn't willing to pay the price for my family. Mm. But you do pay a price.
I mean, there's so many lessons there about the trade-offs that we all take every day. And sometimes the price is much higher, depending on who we are and our identity.
Totally. And it shouldn't be, we can waste our time saying it's terrible, terrible. I mean, I do think it's terrible.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
But either you change it or you work with it. But I don't know, just complaining about it is not going to help.
I also think it's really powerful for people to hear, like you said, Tashira, right? That positions that a lot of folks aspire to be in, right? And I can think of a lot of places you've held in your life, both professionally and personally, right? Right. In the legislature, first woman on a board, mother of 4 healthy kids, partner to a doctor, living,
right? Yeah, I forgot about the board. Yeah.
Right. And, teacher, writer, speaker, and kind of think about it in one light as something that was so easy or positive. And I think one of the things that Tashira and I have really tried to do in this platform is talk about the power of intentionality and understanding that any decision you make is going to have ramifications, both positive and negative.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there's no one thing.
As I say, there is no Prince Charming.
Mm-hmm. Or princess. Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of us are thinking about some of these decisions and what are the trade-offs that we're willing to make. Right.
And the trade-offs change because we talked about all these moving parts. You're changing, the kids are changing, your parents are changing. And you get in this sandwich generation part where, you got to put family first, maybe.
And what about, I'm interested, you said, you weren't like Hillary Clinton.
Right.
What about being in the public sector or in the public eye while having children were you so worried about?
Well, what happens is, if you think not telling the truth is new, it is not. It's only got a bigger megaphone now. So, I was getting a political appointment. I was accused of my husband was for free for the state helping out with some Medicare and Medicaid. And somebody talked about it as a conflict of interest. And then after I got appointed, he put his arm around me and said, "Oh, honey, you know it's just politics."
Oh my gosh.
But in the paper, it, you know, you don't know how it's going to be reported. That would be an example. And that was fine for me to take. I wasn't thrilled about my kids having to take it. So, you know, I made one decision, Hillary made another, and she had, and in a certain sense, I mourn those goodies because maybe I could have had them and maybe I couldn't, because there are so many variables that would have been in the way. You know, it's always easy to fantasize. You could have been, but it is not in your control.
No.
But, yeah.
Yeah. So, question, how has the assault on women's bodies over the last few years that we all are very much aware of impacted you personally? And how have you channeled the anger that you felt, I'm sure?
Well, I just feel so sad because it is so manipulative and so unfair. Well, what I did is I thought about how can I be the most effective? And I can be the most effective not by marching anymore, not by stuffing envelopes, not that anyone does anymore. Are there envelopes anymore? But anyway, I can write to certain New Hampshire papers, and I did write an article about I was in the legislature and I miscarried while I was there. And I didn't even know I was pregnant. And it pointed out a lot of lessons about pregnancy, you know, not knowing. And I think men don't realize that. How can you not know? Well, we know how we can not know, right? It brought out that infection could have come in. You know, what were some of the things that people thought about? And I published this, you know, was able to publish it in New Hampshire easily. And from that, there's a group in Maine, GRR, it's called, GRR, Grandmothers for Reproductive Rights.
Ooh, I love this.
And I don't know, I did something for them. And so these were ways that I felt that I could do it. I wrote letters to the editor and papers that, you know, local papers or local news is much easier to get into than national news. And so I try to focus on what I can do the most. I also had an interesting talk with my granddaughter, and I realized that the younger generation, I want you out there to know that it was so bad, folks. It just controlled our life. Would we get pregnant? And that was all you thought about because, you know, birth control wasn't as good and there was no recourse.
So I'm thinking, Margo and I, we always start an episode with dumb shit people say. Sometimes it's positive, but mostly a lot of dumb shit is out there, as you know. So we talked about a woman in Ohio a lawmaker who said that it was a blessing basically for a 10-year-old to have been raped and that life should always win. And Margo and I are like, how are people saying these things? Do they really even believe them? As a former lawmaker, where do you draw the line?
I believe that people do believe this. And I think you draw the line by talking about what you do agree on. And in this case, I think we agree that both the baby and the mother should live. And we know the stats on younger children having babies is not good. It's not good. Her body's not built for it yet. So I would start on, you know, making sure that we can agree on a lot of things. And I have worked with people who who feel quite differently from me about the abortion issue. So, for example, one of the things I'm most proud of in the legislature, I think it was the first bill in the country, but it was certainly an early bill of opening adoption records. And why do I bring this up at this point? Because that if you're going to not allow abortion, you have to make sure that there are so many supports. What kind of money are you giving a woman to support her during her pregnancy? What kind of supports afterwards? So when I was in the legislature, I had my third child. And I think for that reason, I'm guessing, this group called the Concerned United Birth Mothers called me and said, I want you to put in a bill so I can get my child back. And I basically said, I don't know if I can do that, but I am willing to help you. And I got the people from all sides of the issue, the adoptive parents, the birth parents, the agencies, the adoptive kids, and everybody. There were different feelings on all sides. And I got them together, and we did come to a compromise. And because these women had been told, you're going to have this baby and you'll never think about it again. We'll give it away, as if we are just vessels.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
This 10-year-old will never be the same. What kind of supports are they going to have? So I would focus on the kinds of things that, okay, if you believe that, what can you do to help this woman?
This is so good because we are in a time where the divide is so wide. And
Yes.
I know I personally struggle with figuring out how to communicate with people who disagree and hold some of these views for sure.
I mean, the truth is, none of us knows about the world before and the world after. Doesn't matter what my personal beliefs are, right? But I think it is a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that we've talked about, so during season 1, we interviewed this amazing doctor here in Boston, Dr. Evans, who is a OBGYN, but also an abortion provider, and an advocate. And she talked about abortion as an act of love.
Yes.
Which I found so moving because the conversation has focused so much on death, right? And the end and brutality and kind of changing the frame. And also, however you fall on the issue, anyone can identify someone who's 10 in their lives. And the idea of their life mattering also.
Right. I think that's so important, the idea of there are 2 lives. There are many lives.
There's so many lives.
And
there's
why should she have to bear the consequences and literally bear the consequences of someone else's illegal act?
Totally. And the other thing that we talked about before you came on was the trauma associated with these bills. I mean, of course, the trauma associated with a sexual assault, the trauma associated with finding out you're pregnant, the trauma associated with making a decision. But then if you make a decision and you're in a state where this medical procedure is not available to you, having to move states to get a medical procedure, and how that is traumatic because you're getting the message over and over that you're sneaking out, you're doing something illegal.
Well, I want to say that I think this discussion is very upsetting. I want you to know I have never heard a woman say, goody, goody, gumdrops, I'm getting my abortion tomorrow.
Of course.
In the sense of, oh, I can't wait to get an abortion. It's, again, this vessel thing. And my solution to all this is required sex ed for all legislators. And I am talking about really how our bodies work. We are not vessels, nor are men just vessels. I mean, how would you like it if I just looked at you as a man and said, only as a sperm donor? I mean, you are that, maybe, or you could be that, but you also have the potential to be many other things. So I just want to say that I feel that the sex education is so important because you couldn't possibly think of a woman as a mere vessel if you understood that what this 10-year-old or what women go through, I mean, it's a real process.
The other thing about the abortion debate, which has just kind of boggled my mind, which goes back to your story, and thank you for sharing your vulnerability. We will link the op-ed that you wrote in our show notes, is that many abortions or taking abortion medication are due to miscarriages. People have to take mifepristone.
About 25% of people have pregnancies are miscarriages.
Right, and a large percentage of those don't complete.
Right, and that, I mean, to put it in terms that I think someone who believes that a fetus
Is a
should
life.
never be aborted, is that, you know, God has provided a lot of these. There's a reason why a lot of these happen. Maybe it's not implanted properly, or there's a
Particularly in the early stages.
in the
yeah.
early stages, yes.
Yeah.
But the idea...
It's called a spontaneous abortion medically.
Right. But the idea that within the pro-life fight, that people are fighting against people getting medically necessary medication to complete a
Yes.
miscarriage, when there is actual data like this, if you don't complete a miscarriage, you can go septic, you can die, you lose an
Yes.
ovary, you
Right.
lose your fallopian
Yeah.
tubes, you have to have a hysterectomy. It is not, this is something we have all heard and know.
Right.
So the idea that people are fighting that too,
Yeah. But I don't know that we all have known it and heard it. It goes back to Ruth's point about needing that sexuality education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I remember in my day, the girls went to one room and the boys went to the other. And I remember thinking, even when I was in 6th grade, this is weird. They want us to do it with just each other, boys and girls, you know, in those days. But they don't put us in the same room to teach us about it. This is very strange.
Yeah, for sure.
well, it's been interesting because actually Ella is doing comprehensive sexuality education this year at her school.
Co-ed?
Co-ed.
Good. Things have improved.
They do co-ed and they do, I don't know exactly. I should ask her.
Yes.
They definitely do a co-ed and then they do smaller groups
Right.
as well. I don't know if those groups are broken down by gender or gender identity or what. But there are some things that are just so different among young people now than even for
Yes.
our age. And so, for example, and I didn't even know she did this, but apparently she started this petition to get tampons in all of the bathrooms.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And I'm not saying whether my child has her period yet or not, but it was very prescient of her,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Because there were a lot of young girls in her class who did.
Yes.
And the nurse said that she was, writing petitions to school administrator, and no shame.
Right.
No.
Yes, it's wonderful.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yes.
couldn't even say the word tampon, especially not in front of a boy.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
So it makes me happy. I mean, I
So,
think there.
I do. I think I did end my editorial, or some letter to the editor I wrote proposing sex ed for legislators.
Well, there is this funny.
I do remember it was a letter to the editor. It was the New York Times, and they called me back within a nanosecond of my submitting that letter and asking me to would I publish it.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, there's also this funny. I don't know if any of
Yeah.
you have seen this. I don't think it's a meme, but these things that happen where people stand on the street corners and ask men to identify different female body parts, like what's a uterus, what's a cervix, what's an ovary.
Yeah.
Where do fetuses grow? Where's the vagina? Where's the urethra? And, this humongous percentage of men of like age and many of them coming to these interviews in couples
Right.
could not answer the questions.
Right.
And so
I love this. This is hilarious.
we all need this.
Yes. Yes.
So how do we sustain the fight? I know we started off talking about parenting, but we couldn't let you leave here without also talking about the state of the world. So how do we sustain the fight, those of us who care deeply?
I think we just have to sustain it and do everything we can, use whatever power you've got, but also with respect for those who think differently. And I think that that's terribly important because people are not stupid. They think what they think based on the information they've given, based on their feelings. And so just trying to be respectful of people and work on what you have in common, what you would like to improve. I do think, I really would like to believe at least, that legislators would like good health care for women. Frankly, I wish they'd stay out of my body. I don't want them in my bed or my body. Oh, there's good. The Me Too movement, no bed, no body.
Oh, I like that, Ruth.
Yeah. Not in my bed, not in my body.
Yes.
So, Ruth, we try to end
Yes.
our episodes because some of our episodes are heavy and we tackle harder subjects. We try to end them on a light note. So I'm going to ask a question and we all have to answer.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to frame it a little bit differently for both of you because it's time sensitive. So, Tashira, what have you been enjoying since season 2?
Being outdoors. And as you know, not only am I now an avid hiker, I also am a big bike rider. I've done both of these things twice.
Once.
Bikes have changed over the years, Ruth.
I know.
They're not what they used to be. I thought I was going to crash as soon as I got on it. It's so light, you know?
She tried a road bike.
She tried an electric bike.
Oh, this is okay. See, I didn't know this.
This is very heavy.
Okay, well, maybe I need to invest in one of those.
You do.
Okay. I'll report back.
About 30 years from now.
So I've been enjoying being outdoors.
Okay, Ruth, what have you been enjoying since, let's say, early February?
Well, I spent 3 months with my kids living in California, where I have 5 friends from different parts of my life, really close friends. So I saw wonderful friends. I was with my grandchildren. I went to all their things with my kids. It was just fantastic. And my son-in-law is still talking to me, so that's good. And he's great. And
that's amazing.
Then I came home and I had COVID. I didn't like that. I definitely didn't like that. And then it's the biking. It's being able to go outside without a coat, which I'm hoping we can do soon.
Mm-hmm. I think today.
Yes. It's looking out the leaves, blossoming, the trees. That's what I've been enjoying.
That's amazing.
What about you, friend?
So I've been enjoying a lot of things lately that feel new, but one is going to live theater and art.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. It's been
so great to get back.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And just seeing kind of humanity out in this different way.
Yes.
You know, I think part of it is that people, some people still wear masks and stuff, which is, makes sense. But just seeing people out and about and enjoying their life in a different way with less fear. Yeah. And the other thing that I've been enjoying so much is I started this new part-time job where my colleagues and I go into the office people go into the office whenever they want, but we have one office day every other week.
Right. Nice.
And I've been taking the train. And so it's just, again, something that used to feel so burdensome is such a joy.
Right.
Because, it's not an everyday thing.
Right.
I get to, read or listen to music. Mm-hmm. I can walk to the train station. It's not cold. And be around all these people that I don't know.
Right.
But just seeing, I think about all these people on the train and where were they? Where are they going? What do they do for work? What are they reading? What do they bring for lunch? And just kind of all of these things that obviously are not new, but being back in this space.
We treasure it.
Yeah.
And I love that little incident I had. You just have these funny incidents with people or you get talking. And I used to use the subway for my help desk because I'd ask a young person to help me with, how do you do this? And then by the end, I was giving advice to the Love Lawn. We were best friends. By Park Street, we were best friends.
I love this. I love this. Well, thank you so much, Ruth, for being here today. I know this episode is going to resonate with so many of our listeners and our viewers. And I know I, for one, took a lot away from it for sure.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure, Ruth.
But next time, you need to tell me it was a formal event. I could have worn the dress that I wore. My daughter's wedding, and it was so beautiful.
Okay, well, next time.
For sure. Thank you.
Bye.
We'll see you all next time.
Bye.